I can imagine the vast majority of you have heard of the term chronically online, and if you are familiar with its colloquial usage on the World Wide Web, I'm sure that you are as amused by its irony as I am. I believe that as a chronically online society, we are entering a realm of existence where the word online no longer holds the same definition as it historically once did. We would understand the phrase "he is online" to describe someone's state of being connected to the internet. However, now we use it as an adjective. When we say he is online, we are describing a person, whereas traditionally we would be providing a location. You cannot intensify a location with the word so. For example, you wouldn't say he is so outside. However, with the current generation of internet users changing the definition of online very slightly, it now makes sense to say that someone is so online. And from this we have derived the phrase chronically online. If by now you do not understand the meaning of chronically online, I do fear that this educational podcast is not for you. You are either not chronically online enough to understand what I'm talking about, or you're not intelligent enough to understand my description. May I direct you to my earlier material, where you are more than welcome to catch up with the class. Please read through the syllabus, and maybe by then you'll be able to keep up. Right, so anyway, now that we are all familiar with the term chronically online, I would like to introduce to you my scale of online behavioural intensity. We would graphically represent awareness of the real world somewhat like this, but not all is as it seems. If we were to extrapolate, we may predict that on this end of our online behavioural intensity, where we have zero online engagement, we would have maximum awareness of the real world. However, if I may introduce to you the Amish, the comatose, and the law-abiding youth, I would say that their awareness of reality is somewhat lower than maybe someone with at least one YouTube subscription, that YouTube subscription being to Ash Callaghan. Very good channel, I've heard. On our online engagement intensity scale, I believe that I am actually here. I am beyond chronically online and sit pretty somewhere at the top. However, like with our Amish folk, I don't believe that we can extrapolate the data to achieve the same accuracy of estimate of our awareness of the real world. I believe, judging by my sample size of 1, myself, the awareness of the real world is actually incredibly high. I would say that awareness of reality, when pathologically online, is somewhere about here. As you would expect, I sit here right at the top. I surpass chronically online, and as a result, I believe I can identify and analyse chronically online behaviour. This is what gives me maximum awareness. So why give you all this information? In today's video, I wanted to explore the current state of fashion using my pathologically online status.
Oh. That's it, I'm not going.
In the current fashion sphere, the words niche and chic have become victims of their own popularity. At the moment, there is a trend plaguing the girlies and the bros, and that is calling everything niche and chic. So, in an ironic turn of events, nothing is in fact niche nor chic by definition.
And when everyone's super, no one will be.
These words are being thrown around far too frivolously to hold the same semantic power as they once did. Let me provide you with some evidence. The following are TikToks I found under the search term niche things I find chic. And this is what we came up with.
Things that I find incredibly chic. So gonna be super niche. So some of you might not even think these are chic. These are just things I'm obsessed with. First, and 100% short nails.
The next one is just having natural nails. Whether you have something clear like this or like a red nail, girls with natural nails.
Here are some niche things that I just find so incredibly chic. Nothing on your nails as a woman. Stunning.
I do wonder from whom they collected their data to conclude that natural nails are niche, but just in case I was wrong in my confusion at this take, I carried out my own research. I found that in a sample of 3,299 men and women, 65% had natural nails. Even without defining the parameters of the word niche, and considering that maybe my sample had a greater than average interest in fashion, I think we can still conclude that natural nails are not exactly niche. But for the sake of integrity and adherence to the scientific method, if we consider niche to mean less than or equal to 10% of the population, our null hypothesis is less than 10% of people will have natural nails to be considered niche. Using a sample size of 3,299 men and women, with an observed proportion of 65% of people having natural nails, we can calculate the standard error as 0.0051. The resulting z-score was 107.84, yielding a p-value of close to 0. Given that the p-value is much smaller than the significance level of 0.05, we can reject the null hypothesis and conclude that more than 10% of people have natural nails, so by its quantitative definition we gave niche, natural nails are not niche. In the spirit of reviving the true meaning of the words niche and chic, here are our dictionary definitions. Niche describes something that has small and specialised appeal, and chic describes something elegantly and stylishly fashionable. The words chic and niche are not traditionally, historically, related to one another. However, if we regard individuality and uniqueness as a big fashion trend at the moment, the chronically online term for this being personal style, we can find a common denominator. The more niche something is, the less exposed to it we are, the more unique we regard it as. As uniqueness or perception of uniqueness is regarded as a desirable fashion trend to adhere to, we can say that the more unique something is, the more chic something is. By this rhetoric, uniqueness is our binding force, dictated by exposure. If I were to illustrate this concept, we would find something like this to be true. On our y-axis, we have varying levels of chic, and on our x-axis, we have varying levels of exposure. As we have just argued, in the chronically online fashion space, the more niche something is, the more unique it is, the more fashionable it is, the more chic it is. We would expect where there is peak niche, there is also peak chic. The more ubiquitous something is, the less chic it gets. This is nothing more than simple chiconomics. A new fashion appears that is only being worn by a niche group of people with high fashion influence. Due to the status of these people and the low exposure we have to the fashion, we find this fashion incredibly chic. But as lower and lower tiers of people recognise this fashion, the exposure increases, the exclusivity depletes, and the fashion depreciates in chicability. Where something is new and only a handful of super cool people are wearing it, it feels rare and exclusive. This item is essentially your membership to the fashion icon club. But over time and due to inflation, that membership becomes more expensive and your item of clothing can no longer afford that membership. Your item of clothing no longer has enough chic value to purchase that membership. Influencers are being given it for free or being paid in views or exposure to promote it.
I am absolutely fuming right now. I've spent £90 this morning on trainers, and then I've just seen that the exact same pair on TikTok shop is £30. Don't miss out because they're not going to last. If you want them, buy them right now. It's linked.
Fast fashion brands start duping it, mere mortals start wearing it, supply becomes higher than demand, leading to our once chic niche item to deplete in value. In this economy, inflation rate is high. The rate of inflation is high due to social media exposing us to more people than we would normally encounter should we not have invented Instagram or TikTok. Our exposure to any one fashion is going to be greater simply because our exposure to people in general is greater. Let's say, for example, a niche fashion appeals to 1 out of 100 people in the general population, where pre-TikTok, the only people we saw were our close circle of friends, our family, acquaintances, work colleagues. I don't know, I don't have a proper job, would add up to approximately 100 people. We would expect to see this niche fashion once. But now, introducing TikTok and Instagram, I imagine if a lot of you look across your social media accounts, there's a fair few of you following more than at least 100 people you've never even met. On top of this, you have the algorithms showing you plenty more people you don't know, so that now you're interacting with approximately 1,000 people, let's say. Already here, just by being exposed to a greater number of people, you'll see this niche fashion trend 10 times. We've changed the definition of niche slightly, but the sentiment remains the same. Even if niche applies to 10% of the population, we would expect to see this 10 times within our normal circle. But if we see 1,000 people, we are now seeing this 100 times. As I say, there's no strict, legal, quantitative definition of the word niche. But in any case, 10%, 1%. The more people you are exposed to in general, the more times you will see this niche fashion. So now what you have is the average social media user will have passive influence from just being exposed to people wearing it. But social media has created the job title influencer. So we also have active influence from people actively trying to sell you things and tell you how extraordinary their new thing that they've been paid to talk nicely about is. So just to tie all this together, in this economy, we are being exposed to more people in general, so we see rare things more often. We are also being encouraged by influencers to buy things, so our consumption is greater, meaning that we see a higher turnover of new things. And all in all, this leads to a greater rate of inflation. Your niche new thing gets boring really rather quickly. Now I would like to present to you a case study. The tabi. The tabi began as a sock. The split toe design was believed to promote balance by separating your big toe in a separate little pouch to the rest of your toes, a technique rooted in reflexology that supports one's mental clarity and symbolises one's sense of self. These socks conveniently fitted really rather nicely into the thonged sandals that people in Japan wore at the time. At first, the socks were exclusive to upper classes in Japan due to cotton scarcity. However, when trading opened with China, they became much more universally worn. It was in around the 1900s that the rubber sole was added to the tabi, and so they became a shoe. Now they are most well known as a really rather polarizing fashion statement. They were made popular by Mason Martin Margiela in his very first show in spring-summer 1988. Margiela drew attention to the shoes by dipping them in red paint to leave hoof marks down the runway. Since his very first show, they've been one of the most recognised and well-loved pieces of fashion in history, and also, of course, a symbol of the Mason Margiela brand. Recently, there has been a new wave of interest in the tabi. In the current economy, this has led to a series of rather bizarre movements in fashion. For the sake of ease, I'm going to use Google searches as a measure of popularity. Here we can see that the most recent wave of interest in the tabi began somewhere around here. This highlighted segment shows tabi's popularity between March of 2020 to December 2021. This, in the UK, was the period between the beginning of our first lockdown, due to COVID-19, and the end of our second lockdown. During this time, we were basically forced to download TikTok for the sake of preventing domestic homicide. We were perpetually being fed fashion trend after fashion trend, both passively and actively. So it's not exactly the biggest surprise that the tabi became popular at this time also. Since then, the tabi has risen in popularity. But if I refer you back to the sentiment I mentioned at the beginning of this video, as with the words niche and chic, popularity has become its downfall. An increase in popularity leads to an increase in consumption, leads to an increase in exposure, which ultimately dilutes the exclusivity and originality that made the tabi chic in the first place. With chic inflation, we now need something new. We need something more exclusive and more original to meet us at that level of chic we felt towards the tabi in 2020. As you can see, the tabi is still very popular at the moment. The most popular it has ever been, at least since Google started archiving its search data in 2004. However, I do believe that we are at peak popularity. We have entered into Muggle territory in terms of exposure, and to meet the demand of our vast population of Muggles, Mason Margiela is being duped by Shein, Temu and the like. And speaking for all fashion icons, as Archimedes once taught us, once the Muggles get in, the fashion icons get out. And what with chic inflation, the tabi is no longer able to pay the chic membership required to get into our fashion icon club. But we don't stop there, we always want more. And that is the key to all of this. We don't necessarily want different, we want more extreme. We are not satisfied by simply replacing, because that does not show any evolution. We are not seeking parallels. As fashion icons, we need to demonstrate that we understand chiconomics and the devaluation of the tabi due to its own popularity. We need something more. We need something that says, I see your tabi and I raise you. This effect is not dissimilar to the physiological effect of drug tolerance, the body physically adapting to repeated drug usage to minimize its effectiveness. As a result, the drug dosage needs to be increased to produce the same effect. The absorption of the tabi into mainstream fashion by the constant exposure, promotion by influencers, and the devaluation of the concept by fast fashion dupes dulls the effect the tabi once had on us. Our threshold for impact has risen, and so we chase escalation. We don't want a different shoe. We want something that elicits the same emotion from a Muggle that the tabi did in 2020. It's not about style anymore. It's about status through extremity. The more exclusive, inaccessible, niche, whatever word you want to describe it as, the better. This is where we confuse innovation with intensity, and where evolution becomes addiction. So here I say to you, I see your tabi, and I raise you frog shoes. Frog shoes first became popular amongst barefoot runners, a trend that has mostly been attributed to the publication of the book Born to Run. Vibram Five Finger was the frog shoe of choice amongst this barefoot running community. They hailed that their shoe was effective in strengthening muscle and reducing injury, but they reasonably quickly fell out of favour because, as it turns out, as with every health claim you find on the internet, it was a lie to try and get you to buy things. In fact, in 2013, a study published in the Official Journal of American College of Sports Medicine found that runners given Vibram Five Fingers actually were at greater risk of injury than your regular, trainer-wearing runners. But what can you expect when you are targeting barefoot runners with a shoe? You should have seen it coming, really. I don't have much sympathy for you guys. Anyway, but now we are seeing a new wave of interest in the frog shoe, this time with fashion in mind. In 2020, Balenciaga collaborated with Vibram Five Fingers to give us some pretty funky footwear, and this was the first instance of the Vibram Five Finger being used for fashion purposes. But personally, I don't believe that this is the reason for the current surge in popularity we are seeing in frog shoes. I think it is their similarity to the tabi that is making them so popular right now. The frog shoe is a more extreme dose of the tabi, and I'm seeing them more and more across fashion spaces. And this, I believe, is the case for every fashion trend. I hope this validates some of my fellow pathologically online fashion icons watching this who have ever stopped liking something because everyone else starts wearing it. Because something that you genuinely like doesn't actually get any worse. It just gets boring. So I'm going to hold on to my frog shoes and remind myself that when everyone else is wearing Zara versions of my Vibram Five Fingers, I don't hate my frog shoe. I just hate you. So that is everything we have for today. I hope that you enjoyed that. Thoroughly enjoyed making this, as I always do. Please do come again very incredibly soon. Do read up on the rest of the syllabus. Love you.